The TYT Sports, a slightly more special edition, because Rick Strom's here. We found him, just wandering the streets.
Thank you very much, Jason.
What's up, man?
Francis,
Brother, it's a pleasure.
great hair today, Francis. You look fantastic.
Thank you. I never knew I was German.
Compared to Hassan, it's getting so much better, like minute by minute, though.
Thank you.
But we should have had Haas here for this. It would have been too good.
No, actually, if you want to ruin the clip, you have Haas here. Okay, so what's first?
That's actually true. Regardless, Richard Sherman took to the Players Tribune over this past week. He's been doing a week-by-week point of view on his feelings towards the NFL and many other major issues. This most recent one was a big call out to the NFL, Roger Goodell, and how they treat their players. Here's about a minute of it. Again, you can find this full video at the Players Tribune, but here's a little piece and we'll discuss afterwards.
You're going to get arthritis in your knees. You're going to probably have some stress in your back. Your ankles are going to crack and pop all the time. And it's just things that come with the territory, decisions and sacrifices that you knowingly make coming into this game. But the NFL really could care less. You know, it's hard to stress player safety in such a violent game, because at the end of the day, ratings sell, people want to buy tickets, people are going to come to games regardless. Now, does the league care when Cam Newton gets hit in the face, 5 times and pretty much knocked out the game, and they have all these spotters and people that watch the game specifically for these reasons, and you see the guy on his hands and knees shaking his head after he just took a shot to the face, and they're saying they didn't see any indications that he needed to come out of the game. If you take the reigning MVP out of a game in the last couple minutes with the game on the line, he'd be frustrated, the fans would be frustrated, but it would be in line with what you said that you wanted to see in terms of player safety, but you didn't, because it would affect the ratings, because it would affect the game. And as our union gets stronger and as we get more informed, I think we're going to continue to move forward and make our game stronger and make the interests of the players more known so that the league doesn't abuse its power.
So the NFL being hypocritical about what they say and what they do, it's not that surprising. However, it's when it comes from Richard Sherman, and we kind of discussed this a little bit off camera and on the podcast we do yesterday, when it comes from someone like Richard Sherman, who's very outspoken and constantly in these press conferences and uses them as a platform, it does sound a little bit different.
Because it holds more water, is what it is.
A little bit, yeah.
Because he's a bit of a pioneer, I would say, for a lot of players' rights. Here's what I will say. There were a few things to take away. Number one, which I think is very, very important, it's true that at times it seems like the NFL doesn't care. I mean, we've discussed on this very medium, and I'm sure you guys have well, how medical marijuana has been so beneficial to so many players. But in a way, they don't want to allow it, and they want to give you prescription pills, and we've seen how that has ruined so many players' lives. What Richard Sherman is also doing by default, he's going to try and secure his place, but also secure many other players' places in the NFL by standing up for them, which I agree with and I can appreciate. But the one thing that we have to remember is it is a business. Let's say, for example, by the way, congratulations for this example. Let's say Francis were to make $1 million for the Young Turks, but then it's like, wait a minute, Francis isn't producing it all to the Young Turks. Well, guess what? They're going to cut him, and they're going to find somebody else to take his job. So that's just big business overall. So there's a lot of things to take in with what he said.
So what I take away from this straight away is that Richard Sherman is one of my favorite athletes in terms of what he speaks out, and he believes that he will use his platform for the greater good. And I do believe that there's a line where you don't want to use your platform to express too much when it comes to issues that's going to take away. If you're not doing anything else other than just using your platform to speak out. Like, this is a guy who's phenomenally gifted on the field, but also he speaks out so intelligently on severe matters. And this is one that I would expect to come from someone who's retired from the NFL, not someone who's currently in the league at the moment, who is part of that business that you're mentioning. But the reason that it's so important is because how big of a business it is, how culturally ingrained it is into the United States, that people don't want to change the NFL, right? So I speak as an outsider who's grown to love this game, and what I say to you is, I would change your game at the drop of a hat, because it's not safe. And the league itself is not taking into consideration how dangerous it is by hiding statistics that are conclusive evidence that concussions are happening more regularly. So you need someone like Richard Sherman to come out and basically speak to the issue that I'm just a piece of meat. I could be one of the most highly valued pieces of meat, but I'm still a piece of meat to these people. But while technology is going forward, while we're advancing in scientific fields, the NFL will have to keep up, or they will face a shit ton of lawsuits in the future as they start to realize that more often than not, an argument, which I know a lot of people make, that it's America's game and we don't want to change it because we love football. That's a bullshit argument when you start to think about it when it comes to player safety.
There's one thing that has to be stated is that I don't know how many more lawsuits there are going to be. I would hope for the players' sake that there will be. But what was the one thing, Jason and Francis and everyone watching, that the NFL said, no, we can't agree to this in the settlement? It's that there's a link between the NFL and CTE.
Right.
So that's the one thing that's like, you know what, the NFL absolutely does not care. Again, there's a lot to take in with what he said, but that was the one thing that when they tried to have a settlement, and then of course later they did, the one thing that the NFL would not admit to, and that was it. And that's why you're seeing now these spotters that they have. But look, Cam Newton was able to go back into the game. We understand what he's saying about how the best players in the NFL are going to take hits over and over and over again. We're paying the price of admission because we want to see those gladiators is what we view them as, and as a false narrative, by the way, in the entire United States of America. They're human beings as well. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, again. But I appreciate him speaking out for many other players that can't.
Well, I wanted to keep the full, I cut from about the first minute and 10 seconds to the very end. And there's a whole middle piece where he goes into even more detail, but I thought that very end piece was extremely important because what's being unfair also is there's a lot of media-driven headlines that are being written as Richard Sherman blasts NFL, calls it being called a piece of meat, untrustworthy, we have no reason to trust them. And that is the gist of what he is saying. However, that last piece is him pretty much pleading to them to say, come to, meet us halfway. Release this information, give us some more science so we can become safer. Because it's not like Richard Sherman wants to stop playing the game knowing the risks.
No,
and by the way, none of these players, or I should say most of the players, maybe not none, most of the players wouldn't come out of the game if they're given the option. If a doctor came and said to them, look, we got to pull you out of the game unless you feel like you are ready, 99 times out of 100. But that shouldn't, no, and you're right, 100% on that. It shouldn't be an option. But what I find amazing about it is that Sherman's biggest point is, what's the point of having these spotters when if us as fans are watching on our TV, besides the refs have to call targeting plays when they happen, but they're watching the trauma to the head time and time again, and they just sit there and let it happen because the point that Richard Sherman's making is, well, look at those ratings.
It's good on the ice. Yeah.
What would be the middle that you want them to go to?
At least
your dream middle?
The middle would be admitting to, yes, our game causes CTE.
Do they have to admit to it though, when we all know that it's a crock of crap?
Well, they should.
They shouldn't hide statistics like
the statistics the other
showcase where they want to try and preserve these facts that won't play into this narrative that we all are aware of. You're right. We've seen concussion. We know what happens. We know that in amidst Will Smith's dodgy accent, there's a lot of good points in that movie. But what I want to say is that stop making the argument that just because it's patriotic that you don't want to change the game. I don't give a shit how American the game is.
But here's the crazy thing too. It's not like people think that if you're going to change the NFL, you're going to rip all the integrity out of the game, what we love about it. But that's not the case. If there's just a discussion, if you're telling me that at the end of last year, we can put together a committee of 8 coaches, 4 of them questionable, referees and other players to decide on what a catch in the NFL is constituted as, but we can't at least put it in the headlines that there's a committee of certain players, of certain coaches coming together to decide on maybe these rules should be up for discussion in the NFL.
But you understand what all that is, right? The Deflategate scandal, the
deflection.
It's all a distraction to try and get everyone away from what we're truly trying to address, which is player safety in the National Football
League. And look, this is the last thing I'll leave you with on my point, is that we've seen sports. I love a sport that we almost view so sacred, but so we have in America rules in place to change kids from heading the ball at the age of the developmental stage from 6 to 13. That ball, is it made of lead? I don't know, but it's because it caused a severe increase in concussions. That rule was put in place for soccer, but you're telling me that the conclusive evidence that's consistently coming up in America doesn't allow for it to be changed when it comes to American football? Why? Because they don't want to adjust. I will boldly state, with probably no facts to back it up, that American football is the only sport that I know in mainstream consumption that isn't adjusting with the times.
You can't just throw yourself under the bus when you're trying to make a point, Francis.
No, the thing is it probably is true, because you think about it, right? Let's look back at when...
And by the way, I think Mos Def was the best hip-hop artist of all time. I've never heard hip-hop, but I like him. Like,
Hip-hop Anonymous.
come on, man.
Right,
do yourself a favor.
No, I know, but bare knuckle boxing, right? Bare knuckle boxing is how boxing was started. What happened when they started to realize that the trauma you could cause from just hitting someone with your bare fists was going to cause some serious damage? Oh yeah, you add some sort of padding. So you add the padding to American football, and what does that do? It gives these guys zero concern for their own body, because they're going to go in with full force, and the weight of the helmets and all the padding, it doesn't protect them as much as it allows for them to go in and try to cause as much damage as possible. That was the first misconception I had when it came to American football. When I came here, I used to think it's not as manly a sport as rugby. Rugby, they don't have padding. Right. But in their own mind, they have a way of they have a way of tackling. They have a technique that prevents them from going in and crushing their own skull. Rugby's concussion rate is nowhere near the NFL, and they don't have any padding. But
which is shocking given the fact that there's no helmet.
The idea it's not shocking because they know how to tackle and they know what they're trying to do. Whereas in the NFL, that helmet provides you with the best case scenario. It's like literally going in with a full bubble wrap in their mind.
How long have they been taught how to tackle in the game of rugby?
As soon as it came about, I
exactly.
imagine, right?
It was from the inception. Yeah. In the NFL,
so
it's not in the inception.
They have to do it
game.
at Pop Warner or whatever is the youngest level of
they
tackle
started
football.
5 years ago, maybe 7 at the very most,
That's
on
true.
how to correctly tackle somebody. With rugby, it was with the inception. So we just got to give it probably a buffer of 20 years maybe in order for kids to really learn how to do it.
And some more stats with no backup. Yeah, that's exactly.
How was Concussion, by the way? Was it good?
It was good. I liked it a lot. Will Smith was good in it. I mean, I buy into that.
I didn't need the full analysis. I just
I buy into it. We've got to
thumbs up or thumbs down.
I reviewed it on What the Flick.
Comment below. What do you guys think of Richard Sherman's words in the Players Tribune? Let us know. Like, favorite, subscribe to the channel. All the other information about our social media and that fun stuff in the description. We'll see you next time.